Did you ever feel a call to the priesthood? Like how did you wrestle through that? I'm just curious personally, and then we'll dive into some more vocation questions. But did you ever wrestle back and forth?
Oh yeah, I mean, I had my radical conversion in college when I was at UCLA in Southern California, and I was like, you know what, girls are too much drama. I just want Jesus. I want the Lord. And so I said,
it's an authentic calling, yeah.
Baby, right?
So I'll marry an entire parish instead, yeah.
So I actually transferred to Steubenville, my alma mater, and yours as well. And I joined the pre-theologate program where I was discerning priesthood in the context of my undergraduate studies. After I graduated, I joined the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal of the CFRs in New York City for about 3.5 years. So for about 3.5 years, I was a religious brother. I was living the life of prayer, of fraternity, and our mission, our outreach to evangelize into the poor. And it was a beautiful time in my life. And I said that phrase, rite of passage. I feel like in the church, sometimes there's a lack of this, right? Especially when it comes to discernment. Well-intentioned young adult Catholics, they might actively discern through their own prayer life and their efforts what their calling might be. But I think for the vast majority of young adults, they just kind of just move forward, move through the motions in life, right? I'm going to go to school, I'll graduate, I'll work, I'll date, la, 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 la. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But say a person doesn't pump the brakes and say, hey, could God be calling me to something other than what I have planned? And so for me, that time in my life was actually a beautiful gift where I got to actively discern, where is God calling me? As you know, if you join a seminary or religious order, they don't make you take the first day you walk in. Just like it would be very unwise to ask someone to marry you after a date, right? I suppose in some cultures, arranged marriages, that's kind of how it works. But that's a different topic. But I think overall, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to really ask the question and to give it due diligence, right? And so even in my course, in our segment on discernment, there's a segment called Vocation and Purpose. I really challenge people to give their best effort, not just like whimsically or just like, oh God, could you be calling me? No, I still like girls. Okay, well, that's nice. You think that just because you like girls, you're not called? If you don't like girls, gentlemen, you have brain damage. It's like every priest that you ask, if you ask them, are women attractive to you? Of course they're going to say yes. A calling to the priesthood isn't a negation of the beauty of marriage or the call to desire to have a bride. Rather, it's an acknowledgement that this vocation is so beautiful, and yet the Lord is calling an individual to say, I am going to set my eyes on heaven now, right? Whenever we see a celibate priest or a sister, subconsciously we're thinking of heaven. We're thinking of eternal life. And why is that? St. John Paul in his Theology of the Body talks about this ontological call that everyone, regardless of your vocation, at the end of time, when we come into eternity, we're going to be married to the Lord, right? The Lord marries his bride, the church. And so Christ even talks about in the gospel, where in heaven we neither marry or give into marriage, but we're like the angels, right? In some sense, where we're wedded to the Lord. And so, Christopher West, who is one of the great contributors in our church to the Theology of the Body, he gave this example of marriage as like a sign pointing to a destination, right? The sacrament itself. And so, for instance, if you're driving down a highway and 50 miles from here is Austin, Texas, right? The sign is no longer necessary once you get to the destination. Well, marriage is pointing to the great wedding feast between God and his bride, the church. And so, anyways, I'm getting a little bit heady here, but needless to say, like when we see that vocation and we see the joy, and I know so many joyful priests, religious, sisters, brothers, who frankly, and I don't mean to be so blunt, but since you're talking about this, it's like it's clear that the purpose of their life is not sex because they're not having it, Whereas our culture, YouTube, Netflix, like our world is so hypersexualized, thinking like, you are living in black and white. You're not living in high definition color. If you're not hooking up and shacking up this weekend, you're not sleeping around. And yet there's this inexplicable joy in the lives of these people who are foregoing sex for the kingdom. And it's such a contradiction. And so for me, it was necessary in my life to also consider, like, is there a calling in my life to serve God in a much more intentional way. And so I did my due diligence, I'd like to think, for about 3.5 years. And, through spiritual direction, through prayer, through living the life, ultimately it wasn't for me. And this is a whole nother topic in and of itself. But needless to say, going through that process helped me to understand that while I appreciated aspects of the life, I felt more called to do it as a layperson, as a married man. And so I'm very grateful to the Lord that he opened up an opportunity for me to do just that in my ministry, my calling as an evangelist, while being a husband and as a dad. So for all the young adults out there, my encouragement, is always do not be afraid to consider discerning, right? The disciples in the gospel said, Lord, where are you staying? And he said, come and see. Right. So traditionally, the church invites people to do come and sees, whether that means visit a seminary or a religious community, or even just start the conversation with your pastor or vocation director in your diocese to begin wondering and praying about, could I possibly serve in this way as well? And one of two things will happen, as I always share with people. Either one, you'll find out you are called and you'll be able to live a beautiful, fruitful life in that vocation, or you'll find out that you're not called, and then you'll be way better off for it. You know how many good Catholic women are lined up outside the walls of seminaries going, I want that guy right there. Because there's formation that a young Catholic man receives that perhaps a man who never went through that process didn't get to experience, right? How to pray, how to lead spiritually, how to seek the Lord, right? Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you, as the Lord tells us in the Gospel of Matthew. So I feel tremendously blessed. I'm not saying that like it perfected me and here I was, the premier bachelor, but it was a blessing in my life to prepare me for my vocation now, where I would like to think that I'm way better off as a Catholic husband to love my wife and my children than if I didn't have that experience. So discernment's really, really important. And I think every good Catholic man, every good Catholic woman should at least ask the question, is God calling me to consider a vocation to the priesthood, religious life, etc.? So those are my 2 cents.
No, I love the example of what you did, because I think one of the most underused tools in discernment is action. Of just giving it a shot, because I think a lot of times we just want the feeling to go away, because there's that nag, maybe you're called, and we try to just bury it and shove it away. But I think God is going to leave that restlessness in us until we do something about it. And it doesn't mean that if you have that restless feeling that you must be called to the priesthood. No, but something needs to be clearly answered there for you to move forward into your vocation peacefully, whether it be married life or the religious life. And it's going to kind of sit there. And I think when we get that kind of burn the saddle feeling of just like, oh, am I supposed to discern? I don't know. We can have different responses. I mean, you talk about I think about the fight or flight response, but they say there's actually 4 now. I've heard there's fight, flight, fix, or freeze could kind of be the wrong reactions to a stressful event. So if you're feeling that call maybe to the religious life, priesthood, you could fight it. Like, no way, I'm not going to live there. No. Or you could flee from it. Just forget about this. I'm out of Dodge, or fix it. Okay, what do I need to do to get this thing to go away? Or just freeze. What am I supposed to do? I'm not going to go to the seminary. I'm not going to date, which I do. But like the action item that needs to be done is what you did, of just action. Like, give it a shot, see what happens. I mean, it's the quickest route to figure out what God is really calling you to. And then if you give it a shot, whether it be 3 months or 3 years, and not be your calling, I think that restlessness would go away permanently, of just like, you know what, I gave it my all. And it became increasingly clear, not just through my discernment, but through the discernment of my spiritual directors and others, that I did see some beautiful things in that calling, but it wasn't the calling that God was giving to me. Because sometimes we just presume, oh, God must want me for the priesthood because I'm a guy who prays. It's just like, well, no, don't just assume because the vocation, the true vocation is a gift. It's not a guilt trip. It's not a Catholic shame thing that if you didn't do it, you don't really love God fully. No, it's a gift he gives to you. And you don't want to presume that you've been given the gift. Rather, you want to act upon it if there's restlessness and see what comes to the surface.